Hi, I'm Gerald Faust. Today I want to have a little chat with you about some concepts that I think will give you a new way of looking at the management of organizations. We're also going to talk about a metric that will give you some insights into how the cultures of organizations work and how you can actually predict the outcomes of those cultures. It all starts with an understanding that there are 4 critical roles that management has to play if it is going to be successful over both the short and the long term. The first critical role of management is to produce results. I'm going to call that the P role. This is a role that focuses on what we have to do in organizations. You know, they say that there are 3 kinds of people in the world. Those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who just wonder what happened. Well, what we're really saying is managers are supposed to be in the first category. They're supposed to make things happen in organization. This role focuses on what we have to do in the organization and ensures that the organization will be effective in the short term. So let's summarize the P role. The P role focuses on what we have to do. Its purpose is to drive short-term effectiveness. It makes things happen now. That's what it's all about. And it requires focus, drive, and knowledge from the organization. It's not enough that we just produce results. We've also got to produce those results efficiently and consistently over time. And this requires another role. It's the A role, the role of administering the business or administering the organization. The A role focuses on how we do things. The A role is all about setting up policies, procedures, systems, getting our act together, getting organized. And in fact, if you think about it, we just talked about 2 different roles. The P role, which focuses on what we have to do, the A role, which focuses on how we have to do it. But think about it. Do you know some people who are better producers of results than others? Yeah, you know those people are real go-getters who come in early, they leave late, they work like crazy during the day. They may have a messy desk, but they're in motion all the time. These are the people who get up late out of their desk and they head home, and what do they have with them? You got it, they got to have work with them. They are results producers and they know that this is the important thing for them to do. Oh, and are there some other people who are just more organized than others? You know what I mean. The people who come in on time, they leave on time, they've got a nice clean desk, they get themselves all organized every morning before they start. They're often systems thinkers. They focus on how do we do things, how do we make the right things happen. Notice that what I've just been talking about is style, either work style or managerial style, or if you will, the personality of people. You see, this is one of those wonderful times when management theory and personality theory kind of come together. And what we've got is we've got 2 critical roles we've been talking about, the P role and the A role. But what I've been telling you is we kind of got P people and A people, right? We've got people who are more or less designed and built for these 2 roles. Now, I'm not going to talk much today about management styles or personalities. I really want to focus on roles, but I just wanted you to know that there are these 2 things and they go together. So let's get back to talking about management roles. I guess I've got to ask you another question. Do you think that the P role and the A role are ever in conflict with one another? Think about it. I think what you've probably figured out is that there's often a conflict between those 2 roles. How many of you have a business or are involved in a business where you've got people out in the field? In mortgage banking and insurance and whatever, we even call those people what? Producers. So they're out there in the field, they are selling, they're going after the customer, they're getting the order, and what are they doing? They're filling out the forms and whatever and sending them in. And then what we have is we have other people back here at the home office, and what do? They receive the stuff that they get from the salespeople in the field, from the producers, and what do? They get it organized, they make sure it's all correct, etc. Any conflict between those? If you've been in that kind of a business, you know that we've got P people out in the field going and blowing. And what do they not do very well? It's fill out that form. You know, the real problem is that those people in the field have to stop peeing in order to A. And they don't like to stop peeing because that's what they really do. As a matter of fact, in most organizations, what we find is that we want P people to P because they are the results producers in the organization, often the ones driving revenue. And we want them to be so focused on that, what we do is we take all the A roles or tasks or duties away from them just so they can P a lot more. Oh, and let's talk about the response you get from the A people in that situation. What's going on in their role? They're trying to get our act together and keep things organized, and they're always going, ugh, the stuff that I'm getting from those guys in the field. There is a natural conflict between the P and the A. And actually, as long as it's done with mutual respect and trust, guess what? It's a productive kind of conflict. We can let the P's be a little crazy P because we got the A's who are a little crazy A, keeping them in balance. And as long as we're working together, as long as we're working from the same plan, everything is fine. When that isn't the case, that conflict can be pretty unproductive. So, we know that there is a natural conflict between the P role and the A role. These two roles, P and A, ensure that we are effective, that's P, and efficient, that's A, in the short term. Now let's take a look at the two roles that help to make us effective and efficient over the long term in a business. The next role is called the E role, the entrepreneurial role. The entrepreneurial role is all about proactively adapting the organization to future needs. It's all about being creative and taking some risks. In fact, those are two characteristics of entrepreneurs, right? Creative risk takers. You all know what entrepreneurs are, right? These are the people who look at the bottom of a cup, at stuff that other people would only call so much go, and they go, oh, it means we go this way. And what happens? Other people come up and look down in there and go, oh, looks like crap in the bottom of a cup to me. Oh, and if it works, they claim that they saw it too, but we won't get into that right here. But you got the idea. There is this entrepreneurial role that is designed to proactively move the organization along, to proactively adapt the organization to changes in the marketplace. It's got to be a risk-taking role because you're not always sure about what's going on. It's got to be a creative role because we're always looking for that new niche, that new thing that's going to happen. And the interesting thing is that as opposed to the P's and the A's, the E environment is the environment of the future. The E is always out ahead of the P and A people in the organization. That's that person's job. So the entrepreneurial role ensures that we'll be effective over the long term. Notice that today's E is tomorrow's P. The ideas of today are the products, the services, the new businesses of tomorrow. Oh, and what I want you to know what this means. This means if you're not Eing today, you may not be Ping tomorrow. And in fact, that's the challenge of a lot of businesses. They get so into P and A that they forget to E. And if they do, they get less and less and less effective and efficient over time. So, everybody understand the entrepreneurial role, how critical it is to the long-term success of organizations. Okay, one more role to go, the role of integrating the organization. I'm going to call this the I role. The integrating role is all about taking a group of individuals and making out of that group of individuals a team with a common sense of mission and vision. Notice I didn't say just a mission statement or a vision statement. I'm talking about deep down in their soul, a conviction, a belief, and a commitment to the mission that we're on, the quest that we're on in this organization. We call this phenomenon, by the way, vertical alignment, the alignment of the people in the organization with the mission, vision, strategy, if you will, of the organization. That's the business, if you will, of the integrators. The integrators are good listeners. The integrators are open to other ideas. They're trying to put people together. Actually, it's probably best if I show you an analogy to try to explain to you this role. Okay, take a look at this chair. Now, I don't want to get into the fact that it's sitting on top of my desk where it shouldn't be, but we're trying to get an analogy going here. So here you are. This chair has got many parts. Each one serves its own function, and together they serve a greater function. That's actually like a lot of organizations that have different parts, each serving their own function, and together they achieve the mission of the organization. So this chair is well structured, it's well organized, but it's actually poorly integrated. That's the point that I want to get to. It's got different parts. Each one serves its own function. Together they serve a greater function. The legs leg, the back backs. This part keeps your bottom off the floor, and together they chair. What I learned in my sophomore classes in epistemology and metaphysics, that'll give you a clue as to what kind of a school I went to as an undergraduate. Anyway, what I learned in those classes was that this thing has essence of chairness. It was a great concept when I was a sophomore. But anyway, essence of chairness. What the professor was trying to tell me was that this thing is more than the sum of its parts. It actually has a purpose, and it is something together, and it's functional. It has essence of chairness, as opposed to essence of stoolness or essence of couchness, I suppose. But anyway, here's the point. What do you suppose happens to this chair if I rip one of the legs off? Well, that's a pretty simple question. We all know that it's going to fall over. But not only will it fall over, notice that if I rip this leg off, that it's going to lose its essence of chairness. It's no longer good to chair with. It actually takes on what we could call essence of junkness, you know. So, what is the, and while we're at it, what do you suppose the back of the chair is going to do or say while we're ripping that leg off? Well, we all know it's not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there. If anything, it's kind of going to comment on what's going on. If we really could assume that there was some conversation or some thought here. What that back of the chair is saying is, hey, look at that. They ripped the leg off. We're going to go. We're all going to go. Here it goes. They're ripping it off. Oh, boom, right? The back of the chair is a passive observer of its demise, from being a part of something useful to being a part of a piece of junk. And it does it without a whimper. Isn't that like a lot of organizations, where people in one part of the organization look at the other parts of the organization and they say, look what those idiots in marketing are doing. Boy, are we in trouble with that. Here we go. Boom. And they become passive observers of the demise or the weakening of that organization. Now consider my hand. My hand is like the chair in that it's got different parts, each serves its own function, and together they serve a greater function, right? The pinky pinkies, the thumb thumbs, the pom poms, together they hand, essence of handness. What's the difference between the hand and the chair? The difference is, if you came up to me and you said, Jerry, I'd like to rip one of your fingers off. What do you suppose this hand would do if you said you wanted to rip one of my fingers off? I'll bet you that this hand is going to change form and beat the living crap out of you if I think you're serious. I'm not going to let that happen. I may, in fact, call on some reinforcements, but I'm going to take action. Oh, and what happens if I lose part of this hand? What if I lose that finger? What happens to the hand now? Well, I've asked that question in 56 different countries. And every place I go, I get the same answer. It's going to adapt. Well, we all know there was there's some pain, some suffering, some bleeding involved. There's a period of adaptation. But here's the deal. We all know that the difference between the hand and the chair is that if this hand is injured or is hurt or is deformed in some way, and if it's still important for me to do something, I'm going to find a way to do it. For example, if it was important for me to throw a ball before, who's here to say that I won't find a way after the loss of that finger to throw that ball again? Or if this hand was used to write poetry before, or play the piano before, or touch someone gently on the face before, wouldn't I learn how to do that again? Wouldn't I adapt? You know, we've got stories all over about people who have had what we might think would be career-threatening injuries or disabilities who've gone on to greatness. The guy who kicked the longest field goal for years in the NFL, a fellow by the name of Dempsey, had only half a foot. And there was an Olympic baseball player for the United States who had one arm, and he was a pitcher, no less. Are you getting the idea? We probably all have stories about people who've overcome these things. The difference between the hand and the chair is that the hand has a sense of mission. It is going to hand come hell or high water. And so the real question is your organization more like the hand or more like the chair? If your organization is more like the hand, what you're saying is the I role is strong and well played in your organization. If we were to write this out, if we were going to try to create a metric on this, you could score yourself capital letter I, because what you're saying is that role is strong and it's well played in your organization. And if your organization is more like the chair, then what you're saying is that I role is not so strong. And if we were going to score you, we could score you lowercase I. And actually, we can now create a metric, a way of looking at cultures, a way of analyzing the culture of your organization using capital letters and small letters by just asking 4 questions. We've already asked the first one. Is my organization more like the hand or more like the chair? More like the hand, capital letter I. More like the chair, lowercase I. And then what you can say is, wait a minute, is my organization truly driving every day to produce results for the customer, produce results for the organization itself? If that's what's happening, score yourself capital letter P, because that role is strong and well played in your organization. If not, lowercase p. And then you can say, wait a minute, are we organized? Do we have systems, policies, and procedures? Do they make sense? If so, capital letter A. If not, lowercase a. And finally, are we entrepreneurial? Are the seeds of tomorrow's greatness being sown in our organization today? Are we investing in the ideas of tomorrow? Are we coming up with creative ideas? Are we thinking differently in a day-to-day basis about the marketplace and where we're going to go and what we're trying to do? Are we trying to think ahead? If so, capital letter E. If not, lowercase e. And so you can create a profile of your organization using capital letters and small letters, and if you want, a few sizes in between. And that profile, if you will, becomes the kind of the personality profile or the cultural profile for your organization. Some organizations are capital P, small a, capital E, small I. Some are capital P, capital A, small e, small I. We're going to talk more about that a little bit later. Now that you know a little bit about the 4 critical roles that management has to play if it's going to be successful in both the short and the long term, let's give you a little test. I know an organization that could be characterized best as capital letter P, capital letter A, small e, small I. Now, just based on what we've talked about here, I'd like you to take some time to think about what that organization would be like. A big P, big A, small e, small I organization. What is it going to be like? How is it going to act? What's it going to be doing? How is it going to think? Well, I'm sure you've come up with some ideas about what a big P, big A, small e, small I organization is going to be like. You've probably figured out that its problem is in the fact that it's got 2 long-term roles, E and I, that are weak. So its challenges are probably going to be in the future. This is an organization that may be very successful today. If it's a profit-making organization, it is probably profitable. It may be growing. It may look, feel, and smell just wonderful today. Where's its danger? It's in the future. Is this an organization that's vulnerable? You better believe it. And what's it vulnerable to? Oh, let's think. I think it's vulnerable to change. Oh, change in the marketplace, change in the competition, change in the economy, change in technology. Any of those changes are going to get it trouble. And if nothing changes, well, it's probably going to do extremely well. I think there are way too many organizations that are designed to do great if nothing changes. And what we know is change is happening more and more every day. A couple of other quick things about that big P, big A, small e, small I organization. It's probably an old organization, not a young one. Why do I say old? Well, first of all, that A role is strong and well played in that organization. And it takes a while for A, or systems, policies, and procedures, to develop. So at least that organization is mature. But the inconsistency between the big A and the small e tells you that it's more than just old. It tells you that this organization is aging. It is getting older every day. A is control, E is flexibility. This is an organization where control and flexibility are out of balance, and it's going to be restricted. It's not going to move into its future as fast as it needs to. Here's another question. Would you invest in this business over the long term? You know, the big P, big A, small e, small I organization. Would you invest in it over the long term? I don't think so. Oh, would the bank loan it money? They sure would, but that tells you something about banking, doesn't it? And one last thing that I want to tell you about this big P, big A, small e, small I organization, or let's say about the metrics themselves. One thing we know is that E and I are always vulnerable to P and A. Think about it. If I give you two tasks to do, one is a P task and one is an E task, which one do you do? Oh, you do the P task every time. Why? Because the P task is urgent, it's today, it's sitting right there in front of you, it's measurable, it's observable, it often is related to the incentive system and it hits the bottom line. You got the idea. P is urgent. What is E? Oh, it's tomorrow, it's the future. It's got some risk associated with it. It's always easier to P than it is to E. So one of the things we know is that in terms of the dominance of these roles, P dominates A, dominates E, dominates I. Now these ideas and this metric that we've just developed will help you to understand how organizations grow and develop and how the cultures of organizations change over time. Notice that what we've been building here is we've been building a profile of the culture of an organization. Let me ask you a question. If you understand a person's personality, what real value do you get out of that? Is that valuable to you? Well, the answer is sure it is. Because if you know a person's personality, you probably know that they'd more like this than they would like to do this. Or that these two guys would probably work together pretty well, but these two people might not work together very well. So the interesting thing about knowing and understanding the concept of a person's personality is it actually allows you to think in the abstract about what might happen. In fact, it allows you to predict the future. John will do good in this job much better than Mary will do in that job. And Mary would probably do much better over here. You get the idea? You're able to predict the future. So the power of concepts is that they help us to predict the future. Now what we want to do is we want to talk about the life cycle of organizations, and we want to see how these cultures we've been talking about evolve over time. And it's pretty predictable because organizations go through very predictable phases of growth and development.